people with Memoria Press, they have that great background with the curriculum, which is a very challenging one. We know that as parents, it's hard. It's hard to get through everything because there's a lot there. And if you do it, you'll be well prepared.
But I think a lot of times it ends up being the homeschool students that have a little bit more authenticity of like who they are and like what they're doing with their education.
Welcome to the Homeschool Journal, a show that unpacks the joys and journeys of the classical homeschool family. Here's your host, Carrie McGraw.
Welcome, friends, to the Homeschool Journal. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about college admissions, and my first guest is Sam Phillips, Director of Admissions at Christendom College. Sam, I'm so glad you're here with us today. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Carrie. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me on.
I am excited about our time today that we are going to spend talking about homeschoolers and the admissions process, but I want our guests to know a little bit about you first because they are going to understand my link. They're going to understand why I wanted Sam. Sam, yeah, well, really, you're going to have to hang in here because there's something unique about Sam, folks. Sam and his wife, Katie, are both homeschool graduates. They have 5 children, and they're homeschooling their oldest 3. And yes, they use some Memoria Press. And so Sam is not only the Director of Admissions for Christendom College, he's been there since 2014, even though he's got a grand background before that. And he's also a Christendom graduate it was a history major. Is that right, Sam?
That is correct.
Okay. So not only do we have a graduate of the school, he's Director of Admissions, he's a homeschool graduate, and he's a homeschooler. Sam, you are the entire package. Do you know that?
There you go. Yeah, some unique perspectives there, hopefully, for your families.
Keep you with us. So the first thing I want to do, Sam, is I want to share a little bit about Christendom College. So I just want to turn this over to you, and you just share with us a little bit about Christendom, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks so much for having me on. As you mentioned, we're big fans of Memoria Press. Our oldest 3 were using it, so they're in 5th, 4th, and 2nd grade. And my wife, of course, whenever dads say I'm a homeschooling dad, I'm sure all the moms in the audience laugh because they know that means they check in at nighttime, but the moms carry the lion's share, and that's certainly the case with my family. My wife loves Memoria Press. It's been great, so we're big fans there. But so for Christendom, it's a great joy for me to be here because my wife and I are both alums of the school. We're deeply impacted by it. And for those who are not familiar, we're located in Front Royal, Virginia. Mm-hmm. We're a small Catholic liberal arts institution. Mm-hmm. We were founded in the 70s really in response to the crisis in higher education and really in the crisis in Catholic higher education. For some listeners might be aware, there's an event called the Land of Lakes Conference in 1967. Because on paper, there are about 100 or so, 200 Catholic universities. And, there's this rich tradition of the liberal arts and strong Catholic identity. And it's really at the conference that these university presidents unfortunately came together. And there's this notion that somehow they need to be taken more seriously by the Ivy League schools. And they couldn't do that if they were adherent to magisterial teaching. And so there is the movement to move away from that. And so it's kind of this false notion that somehow faith and reason are in conflict. So you have a real loss of the Catholic identity, and you have a real culling, actually, of the traditional liberal arts that had kind of defined not just Catholic, but mostly, even secular university curricula before that. So our founder, Dr. Carroll, was coming into that vacuum and saying, the church developed the university system. We have this beautiful patrimony, and I want to offer this time-tested approach where the truth and its pursuit is at the center of what we do, where the faith informs all aspects of life, and I'm going to call it Christendom. And we joke from a marketing point of view, the name is horrible because many people cannot pronounce it. It's sadly a term that's been lost in our modern vocabulary where when I go on the road, I'm introduced as being from Christendom, Dome, one time from Crimson. You never know what you're going to get. And yet we couldn't have any other name because it speaks to the particular mission of our school, which is the idea that, it's harkening back to a time and place in which the faith permeated and informed all aspects of life.
Yes,
we live in a very compartmentalized world today where the faith and the truth is a thing that you do for an hour on a Sunday, maybe. And rather than it being a very robust worldview that elevates and gives beauty and dignity to all aspects, to architecture, music and art. Memoria Press, you guys seek to do that in all your different courses and so show how beauty and truth should inform that. So that was the background of Christendom, is really to give students that real immersion in the faith and true, the true, the good, the beautiful, and to form students who are going to go out and to impact the culture that, the higher education now is just a mess. They're indoctrination centers where the main pursuit is ideology, and to have a true education grounded in the truth where people can go out and carry out our mission, which is to restore all things in Christ.
That's
so that's
right.
kind of a brief rundown of the school, and I'm happy to go into more particulars there. But that's kind of hopefully the mission of Christendom, which is a very specific, particular one here within the scope even of more conservative universities.
And the true, the good, and the beautiful, I know where your campus is. It is beautiful. It is set in just a beautiful setting. And I'm happy to know many graduates actually of Christendom in my life. And they all speak very highly of it. So
That's great.
thank you for introducing that in such a beautiful way, in that, the purpose of higher education should be that Christ permeates our life. He continues to permeate our life, coming out of our homeschool, education, and our faithful families. So let's turn to homeschoolers a little bit, and I want to ask if you think in the admissions process that homeschoolers should be worried about any type of competitive status in this application process to colleges and universities.
Sure, that's a great question. It's hard to answer. It's sort of a yes and no answer. So to give you some background for here at Christendom, so in my office, the majority of my staff were all homeschool grads. As you mentioned, I was homeschooled all the way. My dad would say I was homeschooled, in utero from the beginning before I was even born, with what was going on there. But so we're very familiar. We love homeschoolers. 60% of our student body comes from a homeschool background.
Amazing.
It's a great destination for there.
Amazing.
And obviously, as you guys know, homeschooling is dramatically on the rise, and that's been accelerated by COVID and people not having in-person options there. So on the one hand, I'd say homeschoolers really stand out because of that background, because they have, especially at a school like Christendom, they have already the confidence and familiarity with dealing with challenging texts and having to articulate their ideas and thoughts in a written and oral format and all those elements there. It is getting a little bit more competitive in the sense, and I know you're going to have Hillsdale on later on, but both Christendom and Hillsdale, the interest level has gone through the roof.
Yes.
But I think, definitely, again, people with Memoria Press, they have that great background with the curriculum, which is a very challenging one. We know that as parents, it's hard. It's hard to get through everything because there's a lot there, and if you do it, you'll be well prepared. So, yeah, it's a yes and no. In that, on the one hand, homeschoolers across the board, I think, stand out. I think even secular schools recognize that there's a real strength and ability and a preparation that homeschoolers have. But I would say that in some of the smaller schools, Christendom included, it is getting more competitive in the sense just that more and more people are flocking and recognizing the need for this kind of time-tested approach in education.
Wonderful.
So you start the process early and you reach out to the admissions offices of whatever schools you're considering, and things are going to be particular to each school. We work with hundreds of families here, all these different schools you might be considering. So the big thing I would encourage families is to start early. Don't wait till senior year.
Great.
Have a plan, start sophomore year, start making your list, your checklist of what's important to you, a list of here are the things I must have in a college. Here's a list of things I don't want to have in a college. And then maybe a third list of this would be nice but not essential. And from there, start reaching out to schools, start visiting schools, so you have a plan in place.
Well, I love that very practical, approach there. Thank you so much. And it is something that we employed in our house. My caboose is now a ninth grader, and we're doing the same thing. There's a focus in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and what we accomplish every year to get to that goal. And I spoke with another mom the other day, just an offhand conversation about preparing for college, and I think our perspective at home has been shoot for the moon, because college may not be the path that you end up taking. But if you don't start there with that goal in mind, you could find yourself behind. So, you mentioned starting
Absolutely.
as a sophomore, we're in our house going, okay, you're a freshman and everything you do matters at this point in time. It's all on record. So that's a little bit of pressure, but it's time for these kids to see that goal and to place it before them. And I think that homeschoolers can tend to be really ahead of the game in a way that by that time, if they're homeschooling high school, these are kids that have had to keep themselves organized, and keep themselves on track. And so it is a transition that the parent has to guide. But I think it's one that's quite frankly, in many cases already ingrained. So thank you for that very practical advice and insight, absolutely, to what it is that parents are looking for at the next step and students are looking for at the next step. So let's stay on the homeschool experience. Let's transition to in college. So can you give us any insight into your experience with homeschoolers in campus life, like particularly at Christendom?
Sure. Yeah. So my what I'm going to describe is unique to Christendom, and I don't think is necessarily a description of most college campuses, although there's certain elements. So here's what we find. We are a school of 550 students.
Small,
so for any homeschool family, that's big, right? Because everything's big. But for most people, that's a very small college. And that's by design, meaning that we're committed to having a personalized approach, an education on a humane scale. I know all the students by name. We have lunch together as a school community. That is an essential element there. And so for homeschoolers, I think homeschoolers in particular, the reason we have 60% are coming from homeschool background, the reason so many families choose Christendom is because they see it as a perfect continuation of what was begun at home. And also I think the size presents a great context for homeschoolers to really thrive. In other words, academically, they have that great preparation where it's a very challenging curriculum we have. You're taking 18 credits. There's a lot of reading and writing and primary sources. And maybe sometimes there's some deficiencies in note-taking or this or that because they haven't been in a formal classroom setting. But, majority of our valedictorians and salutatorians have been homeschoolers over the last couple of years. So they do very well in that setting. I think homeschoolers have a confidence as far as asking questions, connecting with professors, really jumping in there. And then on the social level, I just see homeschoolers just really flourish here.
I think so too, and that's why this first of my college themed podcast is starting with our small private Christian colleges, because of that familiarity that can be brought by these smaller colleges, these smaller communities. And I know we say that even any jump, from out of homeschool can be a big jump. Any jump in numbers is a big jump.
Right.
And while there are, definite advantages to a larger school or disadvantages to a larger school, each of them have their own package, and it's just like you said before, is making that list of what it is that you want to step into, to get out of it, who it is that you want to become while you are a student away from home, is all part of that decision-making process. So, I want to comment here that Christendom was ranked one of the top 20 best colleges for homeschool students by bestschools.org. I think it is. I don't know if you even knew that, but it's a good list. It's a good list, and you're on it for sure. And now after talking to you, I definitely know why. So talk about you've really helped us understand why Christendom is such a fit for homeschoolers, but there's more. There's some specific things that you all do to make sure that homeschoolers feel valued and sought after, aren't there?
That is correct. So on Saturday, October 9th, we have our Homeschool Visit Day. This is an annual event. It's an open house admissions event. And so I invite all families who are listening, if you want to see what Christendom is like, come on out. We'll have various presentations. Students will be able to attend sample classes. We actually have the president of the Cardinal Newman Society, Patrick Riley, who some listeners might be familiar with.
Yes, absolutely.
Who helps with a guide on evaluating Catholic schools. He'll be speaking. He's a student here at Christendom. It's a great time to be at Christendom. We have a beautiful new chapel that's being constructed. So talking about, giving an example to culture of things that are beautiful. It's a gorgeous Gothic, it looks like a cathedral. We can't technically call it that because it's just a chapel, but a great chance to come out and see that. The other bug in the ear I would throw out there is we have a summer program. It's called the Best Week Ever. I know it's high praise, but that's what participants consistently describe it as. And it's for students who are going into their senior year. So for any of you all who have students who are juniors right now, this would be a great thing to look into. We have 5 one-week sessions. During the week at the Best Week Ever, they're attending classes in philosophy, theology, history, literature, going to mass, hiking, canoeing, debates, talent show. It's an incredible experience. I'll warn you, though, we do fill up quickly. It opens up on December 1 for applications. And last year, I think we filled up in February and had like 100-plus person waiting list. So anyone who's interested, you can find more information both about our Homeschool Visit Day and our 2022 Best Week Ever summer program at christendom.edu.
Okay.
And we'd love for more Memoria Press families to give Christendom a look.
That is very, very helpful. Thank you so much. And again, just that perspective of, the true, the good, the beautiful, that continuation of community, that continuation of virtue, that continuation of faith, beyond that which our families are working to place in the hearts of their children while they're at home. So I'm really grateful for your time here, Sam. Grateful that your family is homeschooling, that you are carrying on that tradition, creating generational homeschoolers. I absolutely love it. Thanks for all that you do, and thanks for being with us, Sam.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, everybody, we'll be right back. Okay, we are here with Ben Strickland, and he is visiting from Hillsdale College, and we're really lucky to have him actually here in the studio. It was just by chance that Ben, in his what you've called travel season, is coming through Louisville, Kentucky, and carved out a little bit of time for us. So I'm really excited to have you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, and on the fly, too.
Yeah, right.
Right. And amazing when it works out. So, Ben, first, you are an admissions counselor at Hillsdale College.
Right.
You've been there for, you called it 3 seasons.
Three seasons.
Because it's this travel season.
It's a very cyclical thing.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about what you do as an admissions counselor for Hillsdale College.
Okay. So going into that cycle, over the summer, that's usually when people are hired, and you're in review of what you're going to plan to do next year, like the next crop of students coming in, and what you did last year. When your first year, you have no idea what's going on. And then,
even as an admissions counselor, you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, holy smokes. And then they throw you in the deep end, which is travel season. So we have 10 admissions counselors, and they go across the country based on their territories. So I have the entire state of Kentucky, and I also have greater Michigan, which is all of Michigan except for Detroit.
Okay.
Don't really know why I have
Don't
the
know
two
why.
of them.
I couldn't explain that one either.
But I don't know. I like Kentucky, so I'm glad to be here. And so that goes from beginning of September to the end of October for most people.
Okay.
And we were going across the country, going to high schools. And one of the biggest things is doing interviews in the evenings. So this afternoon, I have, I think, 3 or 4 interviews.
Thanks for staying on the road for these students. Really,
thank you.
Really, it's amazing what you all do. So let's get to homeschool students. And I want to dispel maybe some misconceptions. They're not misconceptions for me, but I think that they're out there. And I think that even some of our homeschool parents are concerned about these things, that homeschool student heading into college is shy, sheltered, unsocialized. That's the word I hear. We all hear that one. So can you help me just dispel a little bit of these misconceptions? Tell me what that homeschool student is like in your experience at Hillsdale College.
I think all of those misconceptions are sometimes can be just personality. It doesn't actually matter where you go to school. I've had, I went to 4 years of public school, and I probably was all of those things going into college. So that's just that's something that, if you are those things, that happens. But I think a lot of times it ends up being the homeschool students that have a little bit more, I think probably because of the choice of being homeschooled, a little bit more authenticity of who they are and what they're doing with their education. If they're just kind of forced to go to class to this school that they don't really like, that's gonna, I think, have academic and also social repercussions. But
Sure.
If you are at home, you are in charge of your schedule, and you have, I mean, obviously you have your curriculum, but you're doing it because you really care about it. Those are the people we want at Hillsdale, and that oftentimes ends up being homeschoolers. So it's a really nice transition at times.
Well, I love the word you said, authenticity.
Yeah.
I think that's, I would, if I were in your shoes, that'd be something I'd be looking for, know?
Yeah.
And so but you did also touch on the responsibility of a homeschool student in high school. And how do you see that, that preparation, that homeschool preparation? Is a homeschooler prepared for the rigors of college life?
I think probably Memoria Press, Homeschoolers, not to give you guys a little plug there, but I think
we're not averse to a plug. That's okay.
they're pretty prepared. It really ends up being what have you been doing? I think it's what is your curriculum. Sometimes there's online APs and things like that, but we want people to challenge themselves. Mm-hmm. And there are some homeschool curriculums, if it's someone making up their own curriculum or something like that can sometimes be not great.
Mm-hmm.
That the challenges of Hillsdale are really terrible. But it is, if you are challenging yourself and you're doing, rigorous classes, I think, like in Memoria Press. But it turns out it's not just like their GPA and their transcript aren't the only things we look at.
It's the content.
So it's what those things are. And I think an advantage of homeschoolers at times is they get to provide, and this is maybe like something that I would encourage people to do, is to include like a reading list or like a course description of the things that they've done, if it is like a little bit more unofficial.
Okay.
And that's something where you can kind of describe to the admissions counselors, and I'm speaking from my own experience from like reading applications. But it's really nice to see like, okay, what is, like, you have an A in English. Like, what does that actually mean?
Right. Where
because
does that come from?
Public school, they can't do that. They have their thousands of kids, and they just send you an A. And if it's an A and an AP, like, we can understand something from that.
Okay.
But like if it's an A in a homeschool, that's kind of a very variable thing.
So giving the admissions counselors that content, what you covered.
What did you read in that English class?
And if you're in classical education, it's going to be pretty rigorous. It really
sweet.
is. So in a world where college is expensive, time consuming,
totally,
and there's so much out there about, trade schools are available. That's a worthy thing, and it's absolutely necessary. Can you help me understand, why should homeschoolers go to college?
Yeah, or why anybody should go to college, really. That's one of my interview questions usually. So if there's someone...
Oh, really?
why go to college? And I think one of the biggest things, and maybe this is just like personal experience, is the amount of growing that I still did. And maybe this is like, I don't know, a guy or something being, immature or something like that. But the amount of growing both socially and academically, just my headspace out of high school, I can't imagine what that person would be like now. So I think it's definitely, at least at Hillsdale, the goodness and beauty that I saw in my own life was that to wrestle, something about really wanting to be a part of something, both social and academic. So
and societal
and societal, right?
Knowing of yourself what it is that you are becoming. When you're on the other side of that college experience, however long that is. If you're pre-med, you've got more to go. Something pre-law, something like that. But
So I think it was on the social side of things. It's a very unique thing to just like live with people your own age for 4 years. I don't know. It's such a cool. I don't know. It's a really cool thing, and something where it's not this absolute freedom anarchy that I think. So I think there's maybe an increase in people not going to colleges because it's maybe like a hot topic or something like that. But I think higher education is a shadow of what it used to be.
I would completely agree. And then there's parents like me, conservative Christian parents that are nearly afraid to send our kids, out into that next step, particularly if they're not going to a Hillsdale type place. But what's gonna happen to them? I see kids being eaten up all the time by these liberal institutions, and so there's some fear on the side of a parent sending a kid to that next step. I don't think I'd be afraid if they're going to Hillsdale.
I think, any college that like, markets themselves or like their priorities are the, betterment of your child. I don't think that most like state schools or something like that are like, hey, we're going to make your your kid better. They're probably going to say like,
for the sake of goodness and beauty.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Like maybe,
do they even know those words? Do they know where those words came from?
And I don't want to like just absolutely trash state schools, but it is something that living with an honor code and something like I always want to know, just simply like, what are good books to read? And like, if I was just, I guess I had like the classics that I think had a pretty good high school education. So like, that was really nice for me. And I could maybe like scratch the surface of that, but like understanding like what is good out there and understanding what does it mean to be good, both as a person and also just like, to be steeped in that kind of, virtuous education. But something that historian described the liberal arts as being or giving its students is it gives its students a philosophical habit of mind, which I think is such a cool phrase. And that is true. Like that's what I have. Like that's something that I didn't like, I'm like going to go into college and I'm going to find my philosophical habit of mind. Like, no, not a chance. I was like, I'm going to like make friends. And I did that. But also I think educationally and socially, that's what Hillsdale and liberal arts schools do. And that kind of like critical mind is something that's super important in this day and age.
And I would just say to parents that, it's a prayerful decision. It's a decision that we have to go into with our eyes absolutely wide open and with our children well grounded in the values and the virtues. Thank you for using that word of the home. So let's talk about that marriage of or transition from classical education in the home to Hillsdale College, a liberal arts college. So tell me about that transition for kiddos coming out of, I call them kiddos, sorry. Sorry, guys.
I still call them kiddos. I look the same age as that is.
Well, you're close.
Yeah.
Closer than I am, that's for sure. But so coming out of high school, into this wonderful liberal arts education at Hillsdale College, what's that transition like? And then what about that student that is furthering their education in a liberal arts school where they have a mom, yes, like me, that's back at home going, get a job.
Yeah, right.
Get a job.
Please.
You've got to have an occupation. So kind of give me some information and insight on that.
So that's a great question. The transition into the college sphere, especially classical liberal arts college sphere like Hillsdale, I think is really great for the classical students. I think that it's almost for them. I think sometimes public school kids or private school kids who aren't steeped in classical literature, they have a lot of work to do. But I think it's almost the things that you have seen before, you're getting depth in them, which is really beautiful. And you're seeing the connections between the classes that you might have seen in high school, but you're really truly understanding them in the college sphere. So that's a little plug for liberal arts school, but
sure. And there may be some overlap, right? In content,
right? Yeah, similar books are read. Probably, the Odyssey, Iliad, Paradise Lost, things like that are going to be, depending on your professor, probably done in our great books classes. But the depths, especially like here at Highlands Latin and other schools, a lot of your teachers were taught by these professors, which is just this new depth and this new level, which is just really exciting. But to get to the practicality of the liberal arts education.
That's the mom question.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is truly kind of understanding the sort of like problem. It's almost like mental habits that you get into, and especially at Hillsdale, we have majors as well. I think there are some colleges that are actually truly liberal arts colleges where you major in the liberal arts and like that is what you do. And I think there's goodness and beauty in that. But so we have a core curriculum that's going to go freshman, sophomore, and then going into junior, senior, if depending on how you want to do it. But we have really strong pre-med programs and pre-law programs, and going into business. Economics has been, I think, last 2 years been our most popular major. So those majors, I think the liberal arts side of things and the core help an incredible amount of things, but it kind of gives you an academic foundation. And then you're going to build on that with a major. And I think you're going to be able to handle that major and kind of bring in your own self into that major really well. And with more, I think, yet again, authenticity, which is something that we want to bring in. That's people that like that. And a lot of times it comes down in the business sphere. And I haven't like hired anybody before, but it really, I've been told that it really comes down to like who you are and what kind of person are you and what are your priorities, and having the knowledge base is really important. And you get that from Hillsdale, but almost like the kind of X factor, this like this sort of subtle thing is, how do you treat people and how do you talk to them? And that's like the habits at Hillsdale of treating people with, honor and respect and goodwill, which is something we have an honor code, and that's something that we kind of hold our students to a higher standard. That kind of practice, and then also in the academic realm of understanding things that you maybe aren't comfortable with, like maybe you don't like Latin, maybe you don't like English, maybe you don't like science, but understanding the goodness of those things and. Dare I say, like suffering through them is
so
a
beautiful.
It's a great thing.
Beautiful. Moms, anybody out there, dads? Yes, we just use the word suffering in a college interview. Because it is the person that they become. It's the person that they bring to you, and that's what I think homeschoolers, again, using your word of authenticity, what homeschoolers really can set themselves apart in. A way that they set themselves apart. But that authenticity, when grown within a school such as Hillsdale, and there are many wonderful schools, that focus on the same thing. When you're on the other side, whether you have that just liberal arts education or you've got the economics or the pre-med or whatever, it translates. It absolutely translates. And this is coming from a mother who has sent, some out in the world looking for the job, right? And have come off the payroll. That's a really cool thing, okay? And it's a joy that you want for your children. So thank you for all of the words of wisdom, the authenticity, the share, the suffering, what students become when they're at Hillsdale. And I know that Hillsdale is a school that is really focused on that.
Oh, yeah.
Is the entire person. I hear that so much from, other schools, big state schools, as they come in, they look at the entire person, but Hillsdale sends that entire person out back into the world. So kudos to you guys. You're doing an amazing job. Is there anything else that you want to share, particularly about Hillsdale College, since you have our audience here?
Yeah, wow. You put me on the
I did. I put you on the spot there.
Yeah. I think talking to your admissions counselor is really huge, and maybe it's a little biased. But that's me.
If they're in Kentucky and Michigan, greater Michigan,
and you can find them, it's very easy to do that. Mm-hmm. But that's something where I think we have a much more personal admissions process than most other schools, and we're not getting, I'm used to talking about University of Michigan, but I'm sure UK has pretty similar numbers of just like 60,000 applications a year.
Huge.
You can't be personal there.
No.
But even though we have like an increase in apps, like it's still something that I get to know who these people are and that they are people. And I'm trying to gauge if they're going to be that like authentic, curious sort of person, because Hillsdale is great and it's a good environment, but it is really like, who are these people who are coming here? And it's your choice of participating and doing the things that Hillsdale is offering is the most important thing. So that's something where get to know your admissions counselor, do an interview, hopefully with them, care about your essays and things like that, because there is someone and multiple people who are reading every single word and trying to understand who you are as a person.
And I think that's especially true of a school like Hillsdale.
Yeah.
That can keep that personal.
And if you have that like thought when you're applying to state schools, like that's going to be a great state school app too. So like, not to like, I don't know, be like prideful, like use Hillsdale as a standard, but like, I don't know, like use Hillsdale as a standard.
That's okay.
Like we really care about you. And if you are able to show us what kind of person you are through an application, like, oh, good on you. Like, that's so sweet.
That's awesome, Ben. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all of your insights and your perspective. You're right. It's applicable across all of your applications, So we're grateful again that you have spent today with us. And I know that our families will reap great benefits from all the wisdom that you had to share.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for joining us today. If you liked our episode, click the thumbs up button below or leave a comment to let us know what you thought. It always helps us to know if we've helped you. You can also click the bell icon and subscribe to the show so that you can stay in touch. Then I'd love for you to share it with a friend. We have many resources here on this channel, so I hope you'll check those out too. I'm Carrie McGraw. Thanks for listening today, and I'll see you next time.